right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Eat and Greet, where hopefully in the next hour or so, we're going to give you something that is worth the time you took to show up today. And I most certainly think that we will, because today we're going to talk about a concept that is absolutely huge in the metaphysical community anyways. We're going to talk about this law of attraction, but also how does astrology get involved? And I've managed to find a friend we're jumping the pond today, which I always love because it means that we're in two different time zones. So we get to share two different menus for the eat and greet portion. And we were just talking about that. And I have eggs and toast, and you're doing a beautiful.
Do you want me to give you a little, little glimpse?
I do.
Sushi.
Sushi.
So that's beautiful. That
and beautifully
really
plated.
Local company that makes it. So.
Oh my gosh. And so for today's eat and greet, you've got like a tourist team. So the food is beautiful.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The food is beautiful. The energy is grounded. We're surrounded in a lot of Venus, which when I think of energies of attraction anyways, I really do think of that very Venus quality. So today we're going to sit and have some time with the beautiful Miss Penny Dix and talk about astrology and the law of attraction. It's a big topic.
It's a huge topic, and I think it's greatly misunderstood and misquoted, which was when you asked me what my passion was, I said, this is what I want to talk about and put my point across.
Yeah, and it was lovely because, first of all, we had the introduction to each other through Patrick Arundel, who's also done an eat and greet, and we're buddies over there. And so it's always nice when there's like a referral that comes in and you find that you're so similarly minded, and more than similarly minded, being interested to think, well, I would love to hear what you have to say about that. That to me, those are juicy connections.
Yes, and I mean, when you said, what is your passion, Penny? For me, that is something I always ask clients. So all through the years when I was a psychotherapist, which I'll tell you about in a minute, I always looked towards, what's your passion? What do you want to do? Because if you're not living your passion, then actually life is pretty grey.
Yeah.
And what I've ordered today, my sushi, is actually salmon passion. Salmon passion. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, you'll just put a cap on it here then, because I've got green passion fruit tea.
Wow. And I do have a tiny glass of Sicilian white wine to wash it down with, because I'm like about 60 miles south of the island of Sicily here in XOXO. So it's a pretty nice part of the world. But Vesuvius is up the road and Mount Etna, so we do get a little bit of rumblings sometimes with the volcanoes.
Sure. Well, you have to keep it interesting.
I know, I come in some mornings and all the paintings have gone kind of skew whiff because we've had a little bit of an earth shaking.
Absolutely. It's not all sushis and wine. There's a little tip, which we know, Uranus and Taurus. I've experienced a little tip here lately.
But it's interesting what you were saying about Venus today moving into Cancer, because I set up the chart earlier, and Venus in my time, so for Central European Daylight Time, goes in 1526 into Cancer, and it's now 1512. So we're just really there on that cusp where it's about to just dip in.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
And it's beautiful. And so here we are, considering that concept, we're talking about Cancerian topics. This is a foundational topic. I mean, the ancients have been using this, and it's just more pronounced now because we have the internet, so we have more information. But I think in the root level ideas of our topics, when we can talk about that passion and that attraction and maybe set a different foundation, that's a beautiful use of this energy as well. Plus, Venus just does like being in Cancer. So, that's lovely.
Yes. So Venus has gone over my Mercury and Mars in Gemini.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And that solar eclipse coming up is just at the midpoint between my Mercury and my Mars in Gemini. So that could be interesting.
It is. Well, are there any that aren't interesting? I haven't had a single one that's not interesting.
No, not really.
Not really. I know. So I ask everybody when they come on, just because we're also meeting and greeting while we're eating. But how did you get started in astrology? What's been your journey here? We all have such a fascinating story, so I'd love to hear yours.
Okay. Well, when I was thinking about this, what's really interesting is the very first book my parents gave me when I was a child of about, I don't know, 8 or 9, was a lovely colored hardback book all about the solar system. And that fascinated me. So right at that age, I was just mesmerized by these planets, and there were these beautiful pictures in this book. I wish I still had it, but it's obviously got lost through the years. But it was so lovely because it, you know, I'd got them all in the correct order. So right at that age, I learnt the kind of the route out from Mercury right close to the sun, and then, you know, Venus and the Earth and Mars, etc., and was just determined to get it right. And of course, back then, because we're talking about 1962 or 63, they probably hadn't discovered places like some of the asteroids.
Sure.
You know, that, you know, Eris and these kind of things, Sedna, they just weren't in our realm at that point.
Make was not hot then.
No, but it is now.
It's very in now.
Very. And Chariclo, that's another one, isn't it? We get talked about a lot. I love Pam Gregory when she talks about all the asteroids. She really brings them to life. So, but anyway, back to my journey. So for me, I've always come into this whole topic wanting to understand the science behind how does astrology work, including how does the law of attraction work. And so astronomy, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, if you don't have a basic understanding of astronomy, you're not going to understand astrology.
It's very hard. It's very hard. I will just say this really quickly. I came in on more of the interested in astronomy, but astrology route, and that's fine. And I think many of us do. And going back to the sky changed everything. I had a completely different practice after really grasping what the movement of the astronomy was. It changed everything.
Yes. Well, in more recent years, when I decided to pick it up more seriously again, the teacher and my astrology teacher and mentor, who trained under Liz Green, so she's got a pretty kind of, you know, lineage, Alison Chester Lambert, absolutely brilliant lady. And she was very hot on me understanding the astronomy right from the start. So the first few sessions were just about astronomy, understanding the solar system and what makes it work. And I think that's invaluable. Yeah. We have to understand about the gravitational pull, just for instance, of the moon. Because if we can't grasp that, it's difficult to grasp what might be happening further out.
Sure.
So for me, in my own kind of path and development, I was always very curious about, well, what makes the universe work? What is it all about? What, you know, the meaning of life, the eternal question. And what was so interesting was all along the way, when I stayed in what I call that flow, situations and people would just kind of plop into my orbit. And if I followed the signs, it would guide me to where I wanted to go. When I was a child, however, I didn't want to be an astrologer. I didn't really know what astrology was. I wanted to be a singer and an actress.
Well,
So
hell,
that,
and we're the same thing, aren't they? We're just singing about the planets over here.
so I went to drama school and, followed that path. And I had a sort of short, sort of 2-year career in the recording industry in the UK, and did quite well with records and, singing. But I was singing under a different name. I was Abigail Brown, because the recording company decided the name Penny Dix didn't quite cut it. I think they were wrong.
I do too, which was so fascinating because even when we met, I was like, oh, Penny Dix, this is famous already. What is this name? It's got some flair.
Yes, I love my name. And I got really upset because the recording industry in those days, and probably still is, to be quite honest, it's not interested whether you can sing. It's, you're a brand, you're a product, how are we going to sell you?
Sure.
And of course, at the age I was then, sort of 2021, I didn't really understand that. Why don't they like me? Because I can sing. So I just dropped out of that and decided, after a sort of a various circumspectuous routes through my life, to train as a psychotherapist. Basically, to make me better. Because most therapists probably become therapists because they've actually been clients. Sure. And it's through that you start to, because it seemed imperative to me to understand myself, that if I didn't know me, I was not going to actually be able to manage my life in any form that was going to be fulfilling.
Right. Which makes complete sense. And how do you help other human beings if you don't know what it means to be human?
Very good point. I don't think you can. I mean, all right, as a therapist, I can't possibly experience everything there is to experience. But it's like Chiron, isn't it? Through your own wounds, you become the healer. Mm-hmm. So, the whole aspect of that wounded healer kind of energy, I think, is also what astrologers do. Absolutely. Because it's I one of the things I'm also passionate about is making it clear that astrology is not about fortune telling.
Right.
Because it's such a strange energy, because intuitively one picks things up. So you're working with the astrology, and you're working with the symbolic weather forecast, cosmic weather forecast. Sure. And yet other things can come in, and you think, well, I don't know, but it feels right, so I'm going to say it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That flow is beautiful, where it's like, oh, okay, we can talk about that.
And in it comes. And for me, that used to also happen to me when I was a psychotherapist, or when I was working as a psychotherapist, because it actually becomes a kind of channeling experience where you're channeling your truth. It's like, it's not my stuff.
Right.
So as long as I get out of my own way, it will come through.
It's beautiful. Right. I know that I have a little prayer meditation session before each client that I sit with. And my request is always, please let me be who you need me to be for them in this moment, and allow their information to pass through.
Yes.
It's lovely.
It's like, with our discussion today, I'm endeavoring to allow what needs to come through, what needs to be said, to come through me as the channel, or the vessel, or the vehicle, whatever one wants to call it. But as I do, because I digress, going back to how I got into astrology.
I love talking to other astrologers because the veins of the road are vast.
Yes, absolutely. Through my life, right at a very early point, actually, in my life, when I was training as a therapist, I met a lady who was a brilliant astrologer. So So it's like just by chance, she appears in my life. And I learned a lot of what I'd call the sort of the core basic structure of what astrology is about. She too had, I think, been to a lot of the Liz Green lectures. And of course, because of my psychotherapy background, Liz Green's approach to astrology with the psychology sits very well with me.
Sure.
So that you can make an astrology session an empowering and help towards self-growth, personal development. I think that's really important for me to do that. But this lovely lady, I learned so much from her. And this was just before we had, I think there was the computer program Solar Fire, but she was keen to try and teach me how to set up a chart manually.
Right.
Scared me to death. Because it's not very easy, is it?
No, and you got the atlas table, the table of houses, and you got there's a whole event. So
life became a lot easier a little bit further down the path with all these wonderful programs like Astro Gold and Solar Fire, and there's innumerous time passages. There's a whole load, isn't there, of wonderful programs that work it all out for you. I'm going to have a piece of sushi.
Oh my gosh, please do. We've already just been chatting it up. I know I've had some eggs already. It's been absolutely wonderful. And I get asked this question a lot in terms of the software that I use. And I use Cirrus, which is a Kepler product, and you can get it at Cosmic Patterns or cosmicmatrix.com, either one of those. And actually, David Cochran was a portion of who developed that. He's vibrational astrology. He's been on the show. Cousin Clarissa is also vibrational, so we've met her as well. But I do have Solar Fire. So I do get asked that question a lot, so I figure this is a perfect time to just put that out there. And what about you, Penny? I've
got Solar Fire. Interestingly, because all my equipment is Mac or Apple, I've got Solar Fire for Windows. So I've got a Windows laptop, and Solar Fire and Windows have become my kind of backup in case the Apple fails. And so on my Apple, I use Astro Gold.
Astro Gold. It's so good. It's so brilliant. Good. Yeah.
And on the iPad as well, which is great, just to do it all very quickly, and love it. So that's what I use. So it was like through I tell you, that sushi is gorgeous.
I'm not having it, and I'm allergic to fish, but watching you eat it, I'm very excited. I feel like there's a food empathy.
I did bring in the chopsticks, but I didn't think that I would manage to do that while we're talking, because and I'd end up with sushi all down the front, so not very pretty. So I'm playing safe with a fork. So.
I will tell you, we're going to get on topic, guys. Hold on, but you guys can laugh, because every time I have a Taurus guest over, they're like, the Taurus people are always really heavy on the eating, which I love. I'm like, we do greet. You be quiet. We greet. But there is just a comfort. And Michael A. Bryan came over, and he's a Taurus. We share a birthday, actually a few years apart, but same day. And yeah, we ate a lot.
Well, I just love the whole concept that you've created here. I think it's just such a lovely way to connect and communicate and share this information. I love it.
Yeah, which is fun, because my Sagittarian guests, like Brian Coulter, who's my buddy, is like, well, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, Brian, we're eating. Slow down. We're eating.
Calma.
Tranquila, sir. Okay? There's food present.
Exactly. So So that was my sort of first introduction through this lovely friend. And I took various other routes, you know, learned the tarot, all of those kind of things alongside my work as a psychotherapist. And basically just kept dipping in and out of the astrology, did a few courses, did the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and didn't finish it, I hasten to add. It was one of these distant, you know, remote courses or postal, and I just got in a bit of a muddle with it.
Sure.
I'm better at someone showing me, so that then when I moved to Gozo, which if anyone doesn't know, it's a very small island. It's the sister island of Malta, which is in the Mediterranean, 60 miles south of Sicily and about 100 or so miles north of Libya. So that's my kind of geographical location. So I'm in the sort of southern Mediterranean. And I met a lovely friend here when I first moved here. She's just going back I've been here nearly 17 years. So a long time. And about 10 years ago, I met a lovely English lady here who had been a professional astrologer. And she got me back into it and started just doing astrology with me and just showing me, you know, all these new apps now, the iPad and everything, and how I could sort of do it all so easily. And then from that, I decided, I met Alison Chester Lambert through Facebook. I had a session with her and I thought, I've got to get this properly under my belt. It just, you know, when I was talking to you, when we were talking about passion, astrology is my passion. And somehow marrying it together with my love of self-knowledge and self-awareness is for me the key for me. It works for me. And no day is ever like work. No client is ever like work. It's just, I'm just excited every time I do a new chart.
Yeah, it's a beautiful career.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was interesting because about a year ago, well, actually, just as COVID was kind of kicking in, I had decided, because I was having all these lessons with my teacher, and she kept saying, you've got to do this professionally, Penny. You know, come on, what's stopping you? Come on, come on. You've got to get out there. You are good enough and all of that. And I was like, oh dear. So, you know, setting up a website and all of that kind of thing. And then, of course, COVID hit and the lockdown. And interestingly, sort of leading up to that, certainly through 2019, I had become much more aware and understanding of what the astrology was telling us about what was going to happen and how that could unfold, even though we couldn't quite determine what the cause of this kind of restriction and contraction and sort of isolation was going to be. But I just started, it's like I got into some kind of flow where I sensed what was going to happen or how it was going to unfold. And at the beginning of lockdown here in Malta, like a lot of people, I'm sure, I was naturally very worried, very scared, quite frightened. You know, I'm 66 now, so I'm in that age group which it's much more risky if I got the virus, and I have asthma. So it was like,
gosh,
I really don't want to get this. And I thought, well, I can either sit here and worry about what's going to happen to me, or all my experience of therapy and self-help and understanding how to manage things like anxiety, panic attacks, isolation, I could actually put this to good use. So I just decided one day I'll do a live on Facebook and just talk about it as how to cope with lockdown.
Beautiful.
And so I started doing these, and I did them every day. every day for about 3 weeks. Every morning at about 10 o'clock, I'd religiously get up and I thought, no, I've got to go to work. I've got to talk about something else today to do with kind of self-awareness and self-development. So at this point, I didn't bring in the astrology, but it was there in the background. But I knew if I brought it in too soon, I would, you know how on one level one can lose a little bit of credibility?
Sure.
So I had to pitch it right. So after about 3 or 4 weeks, this lovely lady, Andrea, got in touch with me. I hadn't met her. I didn't know her. She lives in Gozo, English, lovely English girl. And she has worked all her life, apart from being in the music business, she's worked all her life in marketing, PR, branding, anything in that part. And she just said, can I just give you a little bit of advice? Don't do it every day. You are going to burn yourself out.
Sure.
And so right at the beginning, so she started to help me kind of get some structure. Good old Saturn in my 6th house in Capricorn at that point. Structure into my routine. It's in my 7th house now. That could be interesting.
Well, it's in my 6th, so don't worry. I'm happily
I got through that. But I did break my ankle while it was there.
All the things.
Yeah. So anyway, so this lovely lady, I kept saying to her, but I do astrology actually, and that's really what I want to do. And finally, she heard me, and so she said, "Oh, okay, we'll do my chart." So I did her chart, and she was like, "Bloody hell! How can you know all that just from that?" And so I opened up her kind of eyes to astrology, although she'd dipped into it every now and then. And to cut a long story short, she helped me brand my, or create a brand for my Penny Dix Astro Coach, and did help me with the pictures and the colors. I go very rogue at times, and she gets very angry with some of the pictures I put up. She says, no, you're not using the colors that we've got in our palette. I said, but it looked pretty.
I know. I get a bit free range too. And if you do have anybody supporting you visually, they really do. They're like, hey, get on brand. And I'm like, yes, a little free range at times.
It's hysterical. And at that point, she called me because she'd set up this big sort of online magazine for Gozo. And so she called me Planetary Penny. So I was Planetary Penny, the astrologer for this magazine. And so we were branding. It was Planetary Penny this, Planetary Penny that. Everything I put on YouTube was Planetary Penny. And then at some point I thought, but I want to be taken more seriously for my astrology, because of my background with psychotherapy. And I thought calling me Planetary Penny for me is like making it a little bit too, I don't know, horoscopy, and it just didn't sit well with me. So then we came up with Penny Dix Astro Coach, because the astrology, coach is just a general word that covers all the learning that I've had. So that's really, actually, I've taken quite a long time to tell you this. That's really how we got to this point.
Yeah, but it's really important, I think, that we did lay it out. And that's something that I found out when we were initially meeting, is that in the COVID time, because we've had this lockdown, to save your sanity and to also feed a call, you just started to share information with other people, which, how Aquarian is that idea of what can I add to the whole? But it's just me uniquely being me, but giving it to the whole. And that's what you did. You just turned on a camera and started to talk about the things that you knew. And I think that this is really an important concept, because even now, still, as things are changing, at least here in the United States, I think we still have a lot of people who are trying to find their way, their feet, their courage. And it's like, just start. Just start. If you have something to give that can bring relief or peace or joy to someone else, just start. You'll find it. And that's what you did. And so I really feel like that's important to to
Yes.
highlight, because this idea of use COVID time to become the best you, that's not always it. I think sometimes it comes out of the space of I'm hurting, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. This is actually all I feel like I have to give. Do that.
Because it was like suddenly my mortality faced me like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow, I could die. And I haven't done everything I want to do. So I better get going now. So it gave me that real kick up the butt that I needed. And so for me, I would actually say last year, 2020, was one of the best years of my life.
I believe it. And I know that there are plenty of people who share that sentiment, because something in them did have this realization that I've got to progress. I've got to give. I've got to do something with this passion that's kind of burning for me. Now, I know too that there were people who struggled. Like 2020 was just hard. It was shocking. They're even still today trying to figure out how to reboot, reground all of these things. And I want to still hold a message of hope here with Saturn in Aquarius. It did, I think, give us the indicator that is, be serious about your technology. Be serious about the options that you have available to you, you know, and that's a big thing, because I think it's very Uranus and Taurus as well. I realized today that the independent entrepreneur is a hot ticket item. You do not have to stay in the financial situation that you are in. You do not have to stay in these things. You can have the children, you can have the parents that you're caring for, and you can make a way from your living room. And it doesn't have to be doing what we do, but there is what is already calling to you, which is why I think is a perfect lead into our talk. Because I love the concept of manifestation. I love the idea of law of attraction, all of these things. But you cannot light a candle at a new moon and hope it's going to work out. That I think is where I see a lot of disappointment, discouragement. So I feel like it's important for us to talk about this today. How can we really get in alignment with that to make it good, make it useful, make change?
Yeah. Well, you know, when I started to really kind of go into this and do the research, I went to several kind of sources. One was science fact, because I actually think we have to have a good understanding of the basic laws of physics. And I'm not talking the quantum side, because I think that gets vastly misinterpreted. Okay, so quantum means small, as simple as that. It's looking at small things. So I think, so for me with this talk, I thought, right, I'm going to go back to the fundamentals, because science is common sense, and the way the universe works, if it doesn't make sense, then it's probably not true, if that makes sense. So, and I think that people struggle with common sense sometimes. It's like, if it's easy, it can't be science.
Sure.
Okay. So, just to quote Einstein, he said, God does not play dice with the universe.
I love that.
Which I really like. Now, there are two fundamental laws of physics. I'm not going to go into this in any big detail, but I just think these are really important for understanding, for me, how the law of attraction actually can unfold, can work.
Okay.
The first law of the universe is that the universe is continuous in space and time. And the second law is that the universe will always tend to a more probable state.
So if you are already set in a position to likely have it happen anyways, the universe is like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Boom.
Exactly. Because a system will change in its most probable way.
Absolutely.
Okay. And you cannot consider probabilities that can't be reached by continuous motion. In other words, we have to do something. And one of the things that I think trips people up is that the way the law of attraction has been written about, talked about, and I'm not saying that the authors did not come with the right intent to get this information across in a credible and understandable way, but I think somehow people can misinterpret what that's about. I've worked with people who go, oh, well, I make my vision board and I put my, let's say, a red Ferrari on my vision board, and I just sit and look at it and wait for it to happen and intend it. But of course,
that's the challenge.
Unless you go out and get the job to make the money, be able to go into a showroom and buy a red Ferrari, it ain't going to happen. Because the universe...
It will long down the road.
Exactly. So as I went into this, and I was also looking at the scientific facts, to remember that I want to bring astrology into all of this and where the two come together, is that we know it's a scientific fact, and I checked these out with a friend of mine who's a physicist. So it's a scientific fact that the moon and sun affect the oceanic tides.
Yes, okay.
So that we know. It's also a scientific fact, excuse me, that planets in the solar system affect the gravitational pull of planet Earth.
Absolutely.
And it's also a scientific fact that sunspots affect Earth's electromagnetic field. So those kind of things we know, and I wanted to make absolutely sure that this was science fact rather than science fiction. I think being an earthy Taurus, I do like to make sure I have that kind of scientific grounding for myself. I don't want to talk about something and get caught in magical phenomena.
I know. I'm like, okay, we can be magical after you understand the foundation. How about that?
Exactly. Now, knowledge. Now, there's an important word, because my sense is that to really work with the law of attraction, so it's not about making something happen, but to work with it, you have to really know yourself incredibly well.
Yeah.
Without that, you'll keep falling over.
And it's not the falling over part that I think is the issue. It's that as human beings, after so many trips, so many falls, so many months of requesting, so many months of this, the level of discouragement comes up, the level of fear and doubt, I think, comes up. And those are very hard to attract around. They become, I think, these positions where then we have to do work to get those right-sized again, so that we can put into the mode of energetically attracting what we want to come in. So attempt to attract and fail, that's fine, but it's doing it over and over and over again that I feel like the human conscience, our little human condition, is fragile and tender.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, we have to go back to almost the beginnings of time, when the oracle at Delphi had engraved on the arch above the entrance to the oracle, "Know thyself." And I think the problem is, we know all these things. We go, oh, yes, know thyself. But an awful lot of people don't.
Sure.
And we don't actually appreciate how powerful we are.
Absolutely.
Because, and I think this is something to do with, excuse me, I'm just going to have some water.
Oh, we've got water and wine. How biblical today.
Yes. And yes, there it is. I'll have a little sip of this as well. That's like a Sicilian.
You're like, you know what? It's all the same. Fluid is fluid.
And I mean, it's not quite sun over the yard arm time, but we're getting there. It's nearly 10 to 4 my time. So another hour and that's it. I will, legitimately be able to have my drink. But anyway, back to, I feel that certainly in the West, the Western civilization, the way we have been conditioned and taught and grown up through the generations, we have our natural light and knowledge and power knocked out of us by society and conditioning. And this damages us greatly. You think how children, small children, they just go, but I'm great.
Right. They're like, hadn't occurred to them they weren't.
Yeah. And then there's an older person or a parent, don't do that. Don't get big for your boots. Stop it. It's like we're not allowed to appreciate our greatness or our power or our beauty. Don't keep looking at yourself in the mirror. You'll get vain. And there's something about the fact that we have had that knocked out of us, and it's like it takes a lifetime. Having been through therapy, and as obviously as a patient as well as a therapist, because to train as a psychoanalytical psychotherapist, you have to also be in therapy.
Sure.
And I initially went into therapy because I couldn't make sense of my life. I didn't understand why I got so anxious, why my self-esteem was so low. Right. So basically, through knowing yourself, through understanding why you're kind of, as I say, your self-esteem is deconstructed, and you're like a mess on the floor, and nothing makes sense, and everything makes you anxious or frightened or negative. And then we're told, just think positive. Right. But actually something else has to happen, because you can't just lift out of that vibration into a vibration of positivity and happiness, right, without understanding what it is that's holding you in that state of negative thought. So we have to, on one level, it's quite simple. We have to get out of our own way. Yeah. And if I just bring this back into how I see it linking in with using the law of attraction in the way it's meant, I feel, to be used. It's about the more we can understand and know that our thinking is, say, distorted, is not appropriate, is not helpful. I mean, I read something recently, I think I mentioned this to you when we had our chat, wonderful book called The Master Key System, by a man called Charles F. Harnell. Now, he wrote this book in 1910. And one of the things he talks all about how you work with the law of attraction. And he sets lots of exercises on how basically you get out of your own way. Sure. And you look for the signs, but you don't look, they will be there. The signs are there.
You just have to be out of your way enough to see them and respond.
Yes, we have to. It's about being aware of all these kinds of vibrational or vibrations that we can all tune into, and which one suits me and the direction I want to go in. Because if you're not on that, and that's where I think the passion and the love comes in, because that vibration of passion and love, this is what I want. Yeah. Actually, you can't fail, because you're passionate about something, you'll do something about making it happen. So the most probable result will be success.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the beauty of it, right? Because my passion with just my intention is very potential energy, and that's fine, but it's frustrating. Potential energy can be frustrating. I really have to put the passion, intention, and action together and make it kinetic. But in order to do that, I've got to get enough out of my way to have the courage to even take that baby step forward. And this is where I think that astrology does help to bridge that gap to get us out of the way. And Stephen Forrest said it so great in, I think it was Inner Sky. He said, really the only difference between therapy, psychotherapy, and astrology is that astrology's gift is speed. I'm going to help you get there a little bit more quickly so you can get that action, intention, and passion into motion.
Yes. Because I when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, if someone says, oh, I want to meet the man of my dreams, nothing ever goes right in my love life. And I look at their chart and I think, well, there's nothing going on in their 7th house. Nothing is even making any aspects to it, or the 5th. And Juno's nowhere to be seen, or, something similar. I'd say, well, it's not going to be easy at the moment. It doesn't mean that you won't meet someone and have a nice relationship, but the energies currently are not conducive to that. So it's like when we were talking and you were saying about, working with that Saturn in your 6th. So you go with it and almost you're one step ahead of it.
Right. Because it's like, I saw you come, been prepping.
Yes. And it's like, for me, I'm aware that, I've got Uranus in my 10th house. It's just gone over my MC in Taurus. So my MC's Aries, actually. So it's just gone over the MC. And when it went over the MC, it was like things started to open up with anything that put me out there in the sort of the public platform, so to speak.
Right.
But it wasn't going to happen unless I did something about it.
Yeah. You can have the best aspects on the planet, but if the movement is not there, it just, I think, feels frustrating for us. Yes. So, using the astrology to know yourself, what are the placements we're kind of looking at, but also what cycle am I in? I like work smarter, not harder. You know what I mean? You're in a last quarter phase of your progressed lunar cycle and you're trying to start all these projects. No wonder you're exhausted. That's the first thing I'm going to tell you is, whoa. Let's use your cycle well so that you can attract in exactly where you're going. And that's what I think astrology brings to the table. We live in cycles, whether or not we know the names to put with them.
Yes, absolutely. I very much agree with you. I mean, I mentioned when we first chatted the game of life and how to play it by Florence Shin, and absolutely lovely. That probably comes out backwards, doesn't it? But never mind.
It's okay. No, it looks okay.
And that book for me made the penny drop.
Sure.
Because she talks about it in such a matter-of-fact way that basically, if say I really love John and I want to be with John, he's my passion, he's the man I really want to be with. And she would say, well, okay, you have to say then to the divine, if John is on my divine path, so be it, show me the way. If not, bring me someone as nice as John or better.
Right.
That way you're in a win-win situation.
Yeah. Because you don't want John and John ain't yours, because that's a whole other bag of your chart.
Yeah. And once I got my head around that, I thought, oh, of course. And we know it's all in various chapters of the Bible. Knock and the door will be opened.
Yeah.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. You find the word that means for you your passion or your connection with the divine. And that's what gives you, because that's the next bit, is we have to know that somebody has our back, that we're part of this great big kind of collective divine mind. And actually that divine mind does have our back. And the more we can tune into being aware that the divine is on, Team Stormie or Team Penny, then it does make it a lot easier to let go and have faith that you're being steered in the right direction.
Yeah. And I think that's a big deal, because this is not a concept of you have to choose a religion. If religion is where you find it, that's fine. But this somehow connecting to this concept of greater power, higher power, connection to the universe, whatever it is, I think is really critically important, because at the level I see people, we get stuck. It's almost as if like we have the best intentions in mind, but the human condition can only go so far. So we have to almost plug into a charger that's a little bit bigger than us to get around ourselves, right? And this idea of that kind of surrender / participation with the universe is the concept that I feel like we're going for. Not this idea that there's this omnipotent power out there is waiting to strike you down because you like John, I mean, those kinds of things. And maybe if that does work for you, I think that that's okay. But behind even those concepts is simply this idea that there is a divine energy that's made up of the same thing that we are. It's just bigger or more vast, so that it moves us, whether we want to move or not, but we can also lean back into it and ride with the flow, because it's, I think, a cosmic conspiracy to have us all living our best lives.
Yes, exactly. It actually wants us to have what we want.
Right.
And that was this point that Charles F. Harnell says in Master Key System: make sure you know what you want and don't keep changing your mind, because the universe is going to say, well, I don't know what to give you because you keep changing your mind.
Yeah, I've sent you a little piece of all of that. That's how you got John Bob Scott. Okay, and that's a whole mess.
Exactly. And this is why I think it's just so essential to know yourself well, because let me tell you this story, because I just think it's a really interesting story. It's actually a client told me this story, and it's about when we look for the signs. So, we look intently to the universe. Is that a sign that I should go this way? Or is that a sign that it should be John, Bob, Paul, whatever?
Right.
So, and actually what we do is we tend to miss the most obvious signs. So he told me, this client of mine, lovely guy, told me this story, which I think I had heard before, about the drowning man on... My watch, Siri, just answered me.
Siri's like, oh, I've heard it. Thanks, don't tell that one. I've already.
Yeah. So he said, I'm not sure I understand. So anyway, there's this drowning man on the roof of his house, and everything is flooding, and he is very, devout, and he just knows God will save me. God will show me the way, and God will save me. So a little bit later, a little boat comes along, and the guy goes, "Okay, come on, we'll rescue you." No, it's okay, because God is going to rescue me. I have faith that God will rescue me. But they go, "But if you step, well, okay, that's what you want to do." So off goes the little boat, and then a little bit later, a larger boat comes along with life belts and things that could really help. And he goes, no, because God will save me. God will save me. Then a helicopter comes, drops down a long rope and says, "Look, just grab onto that. I'll pull you up. We'll save you." No, it's okay, because I know God is going to save me. Anyway, he dies. So there he is in heaven. And he says to God, "What happened? Why didn't you come and save me?" And God goes, "I did. I sent you a rowing boat. I sent you a lifeboat with life jackets on it. I sent you the helicopter."
Yeah.
And this is often what happens. We don't see what's under our noses.
Yeah.
We don't see what is just quite obvious. So, if the universe is saying, go this way, we have to go that way, even if it might not seem the right thing. The I Ching, because the I Ching is a wonderful system, I think, because it's like, it either furthers the man to approach the mountain, or it does not further the man to approach the mountain. And of course, the Chinese used to use this system to really sort of, in a sense, tune into that. Yeah. What are the signs? Right. And they would operate their lives within that kind of structure.
Yeah, which is lovely.
And in the West, this is what I think has gone wrong. I'm not sure about the Eastern, more Asian, China, Japan, I don't know how their culture views these things. I think that I mean, certainly with Hinduism in India, there's a slightly different understanding of the way that the universe works. But in the West, I think we've just, with the patriarchy and the kind of dumbing down or dulling down of the feminine, I think it's brought so much of this kind of logical masculine energy in, which is, I'm not criticizing logical masculine energy because we need it, but the balance has gone wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think with everything that's happening at the moment, the energies and the astrological energies are, I think, imploring us to get that balance right.
And I think that we have, for the first time in a very long time, a lot of generations alive on this planet at the same time globally, and that's huge. But of that, our younger generation, it's common for them to have an astrologer, a therapist, that's commonplace for them. And I think that generation has turned some of this volume back up to, well, hold on, that's not in alignment with me. But also, you know what I mean? So it's kind of brought some of that back. But it is interesting that we have all of the generations on the stage at the same time, which is also the reason I think that the Pluto Libra generation is really on fire right now, because it's like, at an evolutionary level, bridge this gap. Because we do need the logic of the generation here, but we need the intuition here. Yeah. And so to bridge that so that we can have these experiences and then just more easily attract in what we want, also deal with the life lessons that the soul's got to tend to here. And then we use astrology for the speed to kind of do all of that.
Yes. And I think because we get caught up in being individual, we forget we're part of this collective. Mm-hmm. We forget we're part of, as we said, the sort of the divine intelligence, divine mind, whatever one wants to call it. Mm-hmm. And that actually, because we're actually all linked, it's like, do you remember Star Trek Voyager? Yeah. The hive mind, the Borg. Unfortunately, they were painted in rather a black way, but it kind of makes sense what they did. Mm-hmm. They all knew what everyone else was doing. But within that, I think it's just, there is this thing for me that self-knowledge brings power. The more you know yourself, the more you choose the path that is most likely and most probable for you to succeed on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then in many ways it can't fail. The problem for a lot of people is their ego, inflation, narcissism. They're such fragile structures for the human psyche that people get very lost, and that's when they're in their own way and they're trying to make things happen, and then bad things happen because they're not actually in that energetic flow. And that, of course, is where astrology empowers you. It gives you self-knowledge. Mm-hmm. That using the way I do it, I'm sure you do, using the astrological map as a kind of metaphor and symbol for what's going on psychologically with a client is immensely helpful, and will help them then actually manifest what they wish within understanding that you really don't want to go that way.
Right. You're not even actually built for that.
Right? Exactly. I'm not a runner. I'm a large lady, and it's uncomfortable to run.
If I don't wish to be jostled around and such, I'm good to go. Right? Yeah.
So one of the things I sometimes say to people is write a letter to yourself 5 years from now. So you write the letter as if you're 5 years down the path, mm-hmm. and tell your current self how successful you've been.
I love that.
And what advice would you give yourself now from 5 years down the line? And if we don't take action, nothing will happen.
Absolutely.
There's this goes back to the basic laws of physics. The universe is continuous. It will always go in a continuous motion, and it will always go and become the most probable, likely, without getting into anything else, because we know all about all the other multi-universes and timelines. But
yeah.
that's
we're closing in on time, but I have this question.
Yes.
And I would love to see what you think about it. So we have this tool of astrology to get us the self-knowledge, kind of get the ego in check and all of these other things that really do stand in the way. And then we can, manifest and get in line with this law of attraction. But I think, and I'm so curious to hear what you think, I don't think that the astrology on its own is the trick. I think that it's the astrology and the astrologer. Like, I almost feel like it is critical for us to have ourselves and a person outside of us to walk together, because I say this, one, it's an ancient practice. The ancients consulted, right? They sought counsel. But if we're talking about something as big as the ego, we're talking about something as fragile as the ego, I can't see around my own ego. But somebody else, I think, can help me apply this tool in a way that I can't see it. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with you. And what I feel is that the astrologer, and you're right about the combination, it's not just the astrology, because it's the interpretation that the astrologer will bring in from their unique perspective and view and understanding of the chart they're looking to. But it's also got to come from the grounding and the experience of the astrologer in terms, I think, of self-knowledge. Because I'm okay, here I am at this point in my life where I've got huge experience and all these different trainings, which is great, and I'm not sure I would have been ready to do what I'm doing now 10 years ago.
Sure.
That's me. I mean, it doesn't mean that other people aren't, but I just feel for me, for what I can bring in that kind of solid form of what's the word? It's that sort of good secure structure.
Sure.
I'm coming from a place of knowing. I'm coming from a place of knowledge, and my interpretation of the astrology, in one sense, will be unique to me. But if it's meaningful for the client, then I've done my job.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Hope I answered that.
I just to come back and come back to it more and more, especially I think as I get older, this idea that we just can't on our own. It's an individual work to do the inside job, but it's almost like you need somebody to hold the flashlight so that you can walk. And as an astrologer, I'm quick to say, okay, we can illuminate these things, and I can maybe even help you see where you got some spots on your carpet. But also, if I'm not the person to give you exactly what you're talking about, the relation, I'm going to point you towards the relation. If you're suffering with drugs, I'm going to send you to someone who's had a solution around drugs. But I can also tell you, we can probably see it in the chart. If you're grieving, I'm going to send you to the people who are grieving the way that you're grieving. If you're joyful and you want to knit socks, I'm going to send you to the knit socks people. Because I just think we need each other.
Yeah. And an astrologer has to be so many things, because we have got to be able to be the counselor, the therapist, the doctor, the psychologist,
don't forget the historian, my God.
Yeah. And we can't be all things to all people. And certainly that would be the way I work. If I don't, first of all, if I don't feel that I'm the right astrologer for a client, then I would say, I don't think I'm the right person to read your chart, but I can recommend another astrologer who I think would be better suited to you.
Exactly.
Because that's staying within my integrity. And, in the same way, sometimes you can get someone and you think, I don't know, I can't read today, or I just can't do this, then in that case, this isn't going to work. I'll refund your money because it's not the right time. Maybe it's not the right time for them to have a chart reading. And it's about that integrity and professionalism, isn't it?
And I think it's also about the self-knowledge has met for the professional, that law of attraction. I've absolutely had client sessions and I've had to call and say, I'm not sure, but we need to move. And on the day that we moved to, it landed, it hit. We were in the right space, the right time. But that's being able to hear that, hey, there's something not right here. You know, I had a client, I don't know, this is a few months ago, and she was booked a few months out. And I said, no, we need to move that session up. Are you available? And it was perfect. But that's where the law of attraction too, I think, comes through, because it'll even attract our clients to or away from us in their right timing.
Yes. Yes, I do agree with that, because certainly if something doesn't feel right, I won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't feel right to work with this client on a particular day, I will say it's not the right time.
Yeah.
And we'll rearrange. And also, because if I'm not in the right space in me, then I can't be effective for a client. I've got to be okay in me.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes back to, as we say, the knowing oneself very well. And, you know, and then one can somehow, you know, it's like a tapestry, isn't it? We can weave all these things together.
Yeah.
The sort of strands of the scientific fact, the strands of the energy and vibrations that the law of attraction, how it operates on some level that we can't even really comprehend yet. If we did, we'd be super brains, wouldn't we?
Sure.
But
we'd be super brains and super rich.
Super rich.
Super rich. Penny, oh my goodness. I feel like we have just bobbed and weaved, but shared something beautifully that I thank you for talking about this with me.
I've so enjoyed talking about this. I probably haven't given you all the information that I collated, but actually it doesn't matter, because what I've said is what needed to be said now. Okay. And what anyone watching takes away with them is what they need to take away with them.
Absolutely. And it's so nice, because I don't know about you, but I feel like sometimes I'll start exploring a topic in collaboration, and then it leads me to my work later. And the people who need to come to me at that time seem to show up. And I think that, like you said, it's just been perfect. It's just been perfect. So thank you.
It's all about timing.
All about it. Yeah. Well, you guys, my God, we've eaten, we've greeted, we've done it all. And with our snack, I know I've had a little bit of everything. So hopefully, I know I had my passion tea. So hopefully you guys out there, as you're watching, you are having a delicious lunch break. I thank you always for building in time to take a lunch break or a dinner break or whenever you're watching, and have a snack and eat and meet the guests with me. So hopefully in this last hour or so, we really did give you something that is worth the time you took to sit down with us, give you something to think about, give you questions. Of course, you can leave questions and comments underneath this video, and Penny and I will be around to answer those comments and to engage and just all of the good things. So I hope you are doing well. I thank you again, Penny, for coming over. And before we go, where can people find you? What's your website?
Okay, so my website is pennydix.com. So that's very simple. www.pennydix.com. That's PENNYDIX.com. My YouTube channel is Astrology with Penny Dix, Astro Coach. And I'd love to see people there. I do the moons, the full moon, the new moon. They can also find me on Facebook. I've got a Penny Dix Astro Coach business page. So I'm around.
You're not to be missed.
No, definitely not.
No. And you guys, as always, I will make sure that all of that information is in the description box down below so that you can access it with ease. So before we let you guys go, I want to remind you that the YouTube Academy is still on and going. And at this point, we have come all the way through planet signs. We're getting ready to start houses with Sam Reynolds as well. We've been through the history and the astronomy of astrology. So if you are behind, you're just jumping in, whatever your situation is. The YouTube Academy playlist is right on the home list, and you can watch them in chronological order and make sure you got all of your information. And we've got amazing teachers and more to come. And also coming up in August will be your first little bit of a break where you get to take on elective classes and just jump in and see what else is out there, but also absorb history through aspects that we will have covered by July. So big year, lots going on. Wherever your learning's at, I hope you've jumped into the playlist, okay? All right, my beautiful friends, I love you very, very much, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.